Hey guys, it's Taniko Pantoja, and today I'd like to talk about my short involvement with KIPO, Age of the Wonder Beasts, and why I didn't stay long term on the TV show. I usually don't talk about why I leave productions or why I don't stay at places due to reasons being normal or nothing significant like being laid off or just changes in goals, but there are takeaways that I can talk about for me not staying on KIPO. For those who don't know, KIPO, Age of the Wonder Beasts is a show on Netflix created by Rad Seacrest, who now runs an animation learning platform and personal story development platform called Project City. He's also been producing and developing several ideas for his own shows, his own feature films, his own ideas. I look up to him because he seems to make a lot of ventures work, both artistic, creative-wise, business-wise. I personally don't know how he does it. I think it all started around maybe the end of 2017 or the start of 2018. Rad told me about a new show that he was developing at the time at DreamWorks TV, and he showed me some character designs, and these character designs were Wolf and KIPO. The designs themselves were very close to the final look of the show. In my spare time, I did an animation test of KIPO to see what KIPO would look like animated. I think after a few conversations, this prompted the idea of doing some more animation exploration for KIPO that was paid and official under DreamWorks Animation. Mind you, I was at DreamWorks Feature at the time. This was when I just wrapped up my work on Dragons 3, and I was doing some animation tests in-house within DreamWorks Animation. The production of KIPO was at DreamWorks TV, and I was still an official employee at DreamWorks Feature as a storyboard artist primarily. This information is important later on. Anyways, I'm doing some animation assignments for KIPO, I was doing animation tests for Wolf, I was doing animation tests for Mondu, and eventually I even did a lengthy pencil test with Dave and his transformation life cycle that happens throughout the show. There were some other mutants that I was working on, but I never got to finish them. Anyways, I even had to do some character design work, such as doing model sheets, character expression sheets, special poses for some shots, and character turnarounds. So I was also doing character design work for the show. Now, as I worked with Rad and talked with him time to time, there was talks of me being a part of the show officially, with the idea of me being either an animation director or supervisor. This would be quite a bump in my career because I've never been in a supervising or a directing role for a production. And remember, it isn't common to get a job where I get to do actual animation work here in LA. So we're talking about me setting the animation style for the show, the sensibilities, and the possible retakes and drawovers that I might have to do. We were also looking at possible vendor studios at the time that would actually allow this process. It would be an awesome experience to visit vendor studios and to learn more about that pipeline and to feel valued for what I can personally bring to the table. So I also have to remind you that I was still on a visa at the time. For those who don't know, I'm not American, but I work in America. And for me to be able to work in a studio here in America and live here, I have to have a visa. Around this time, my visa was sponsored by DreamWorks Feature. To qualify for something like a green card, which is permanent residency here, I was doing the way where I needed to show proof that I had leading roles in the industry and that I also had influence in the production. Another way that I could go about it is I could get nominated by the Academy Award or actually win an Oscar award, for example. That's why I spent almost like 2 years boarding this single 35-minute film at one point in my life. So at this point, getting directing or supervising gigs would not only bump up my career, but it would also strengthen my chances of getting a permanent residency here in the United States. I mean, why not if I see myself working here for a while? And also the possibility of settling down here. So I get a call from DreamWorks Animation TV. Now I can't remember if this was a producer or if this was someone from artist management. And they said if I come onto the show, I would have the title of character designer. Now, here's where things get super weird during that phone call. So I tell them that I was in talks with Rad about my role as an animator and a possible animation director and supervisor. The person on the phone, and then again, I can't remember who it was, they seemed adamant about downplaying my role. They said I was only using my 2D animation knowledge and skills to help me with my character design work. They said that there's no room for an animation supervising or directing role, and that I was strictly gonna stick to character design work. They even stated the rate that they were willing to offer, which was considered under the minimum rate of what the Animation Guild states as appropriate pay for character designers. I found this out through their website and I even called them. However, this person representing DreamWorks TV, they were insisting that this was the guild rate. Now, switching from a story artist role to a character design role is quite a change for me, and knowing that I would provide actual animation work for KIPO, I tried to negotiate a higher rate, but again, they were downplaying my role. Stick to your lane as a character designer. Mind you, I'm already 4 years into the industry as a full-time artist, and they were offering rates that were of a story revisionist at the time. So I'm talking to Rad to double check my role and purpose on this production. We're pretty much on the same page. He's not involved with the management side at DreamWorks TV, so he didn't really have any idea of what was going on in terms of the negotiation part. I even talked to the Animation Guild and the union at the time, and they even said that I should fight for higher rates based on what I was going to be doing on that show. They even stated that DreamWorks TV was providing a lower rate than the minimum rate of a character designer. They were even surprised that I was still getting paid trainee rates or entry-level rates as a person who has been in the industry for 4 years already. Now, the good thing about the animation industry in LA is that we do have the Animation Guild, and we can always reach out to them if something feels off about a job or a contract from a studio that does follow guild rates. Most major studios here in LA are monitored by the Animation Guild. Rad also confirmed that I was going to be doing animation work. So after a lot of back and forths, negotiating and renegotiating, I get a call from DreamWorks TV. They said that they were bumping up my rate, which honestly was still pretty low, but much higher than my current position. But they were still going to give me the character design title. I asked them about that, and they just told me that a role like, animation director or supervisor does not exist in the TV pipeline. Okay. However, I did begin to accept it because I personally did want to help on KIPO, and I do get to do what I was capable of. I get to animate. I would have a voice. It was a one-in-a-lifetime opportunity where I got to flex a different muscle than my normal full-time job, and I get to work with some great talent. A lot of those guys on that show are my friends. Some of them I've worked in the past. I've worked with Rad in the past, so I was looking forward to it. And for the possible green card applications, I can just get testimonial letters from the people that I work with to talk about my involvement with a production. Now, before we move forward, this was when we had to talk about switching my visa sponsorship. Now, remember when I said that I was at DreamWorks Feature and KIPO was at DreamWorks TV? Turns out, even though they are under the same company, I guess they use different entities for visas or different sponsors for visas. In other words, I'd have to get a new visa as if I was getting hired by a completely different company. And visas can take a while to process and they can be costly. So I had to get a different O1 visa from DreamWorks TV to be able to work full-time for KIPO. Then this was when things got really weird. The person on the phone said that they are willing to pay so much for my visa, and that if I decided to leave for Netflix during my time on KIPO, they specifically said that I would be burning bridges. Who does this on the phone? So I told them, hey, you guys went under the minimum rate. I was even willing to accept the minimum rate if you gave me the animation director title for my EB1 application reasons. You didn't even want to budge with that. And they just simply responded, well, we bumped up your pay. This was hard to do. The audacity. Also, O1 visa applications are pennies for a company like DreamWorks. They can cost about a few $1,000s, including lawyer fees or whether the process is expedited or not. And you might be thinking, holy crap, that's so expensive. But in reality, if you're being paid union rates here in LA, it's super doable. But to a company like DreamWorks, I mean, come on, that's pennies for them. But they insist visas are so expensive. And if I decided to leave DreamWorks, I would be burning bridges because of that. So yeah, I let Rad know I've decided to move forward with KIPO and that I would transition into the TV department. And things seem like they are going okay. And I was ready for the final move, the final transition, the transformation. I get to work on a cool show at the time. So out of nowhere, I get a call from Rad to meet him in his office. I come in and they let me know that there has been changes in the production. They switched vendor studios. And for those who don't know what a vendor studio is, you have to also know that a lot of the animation is not done in-house within a studio. It's done through a separate studio that mostly does animation service. So for example, Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is a Nickelodeon production, but the animation is done by Flying Bark. The Legend of Korra is a Nickelodeon production, but the animation is done through Studio Mir. The vendor studio that we were about to work with was Titmouse in Vancouver. We were told that they were unavailable at the time, and now we had to work with Studio Mir. Now, this was a big change because if it was with Titmouse, I'd have more involvement with the animation production. I'd be communicating more, and I'd actually be animating more. With Mir, they already have their own way and pipeline in Korea, and if I were to join KIPO, my involvement would only be doing character turnarounds, mouth charts, possible expression, and poses. No more animation. That was a big change, and the reason why I considered joining on the show was to be more involved with the animation department, since it was a world that I was also familiar with and that I wanted to take a shot at it. I would also have more power for my permanent residency applications. If I joined as a character designer, I would probably spend way more time learning and having to keep up with already seasoned character designers. And again, I just want to remind you that this is not a bad thing. I just have different goals. I'm thinking about my strengths, and I'm also thinking about my situation being in a visa and all. As much as I could have learned the value and the experience of working as a full-time character designer, I also wanted to grow more as a story artist and to explore that world even more. I thought if I just developed my skills as a story artist and become really good at that, I could get great opportunities that is specifically catered to my skills as a story artist. That could possibly lead to directing roles or head of story roles, which at the time would have looked really cool for my green card application. And to be petty, my career vanity. So in the end, I decided to stay at DreamWorks Feature as a story artist and not move forward with KIPO. I ended up working on The Croods too. So I wanted to share the story because there are some big takeaways from this. Not necessarily advice, but things I learned from the experience. The first one being is to know your own circumstance and what would do you good in the long run. I was on a visa at the time, so I was also prioritizing opportunities where I could have more influential roles or use skills that I'm already seasoned at. That would make my future green card applications look good. While getting paid fairly was a concern, I was more focused on getting roles that would help me secure my green card. Second is to be aware if someone is taking advantage of you or not respecting you, maybe talking down on you. Rad and Bill and the rest of the creative team at KIPO were very supportive and would help me out on the stuff, but something about management seemed off. It was the first and only time I was talked down about my role. I was threatened that I would burn bridges within a year of production if I decided to leave. They would try to convince me that the offer that they were making was considered normal, fair, and normal range. I mean, who does that on the phone, says that you will burn bridges? This is a type of communication that already makes me not want to continue this. It makes me want to burn that bridge even more, to be honest. If you're in an industry that does have a union or somewhere that does have a union, reach out to them. If you don't have that, reach out to fellow artists, your coworkers. I ask my coworkers and fellow artists about rates. I talk to them openly about how much I should ask for, just to get a better understanding of fair pay. Third point, now this is an issue with a lot of major studios, which is they tell you that you're going to be doing a certain job, but once you join, you're doing stuff that you've never signed up for. So for example, a studio tries to lure you in by telling you, oh, if you join, you're going to be a director, you're going to be viz dev lead, you're going to be a character design lead, and you're going to be a head of story. And once that artist comes in, they're just going to be drawing rocks for a background, or they are only doing revision and file organization work, for example. I guess it nearly happened to me on KIPO, where I was gonna come in with the sole purpose of doing some animation work, but if I were to join, there was no animation work. I understand why some of my artist friends have lawyers and agents that make it part of their contract to not make this happen. Higher ups have sadly taken advantage of younger artists who were victims of this. It's happened to many of my friends already. The fourth thought that I have is to know your goals in your career. Some of you might want to become a director or a leading role or someone big in the industry, or maybe you want to lean towards the more indie side. Or maybe you have other goals and priorities outside of animation. While I emphasize the whole visa stuff, I wanted to eventually become a director or head of story on a production. I've worked as a full-time story artist since 2014, doing 2D animation freelance on the side. If I stayed on track, keep getting better at being a story artist, just do animation freelance on the side like I usually do, that would probably eventually happen. Now that I'm here right now, I've also realized that I have a lot to learn, and I'm not really in a rush to do any big leading role. If it's offered, I'll consider it. I know I also find satisfaction with my own personal work. I fully own them too, and if I decided to move forward with it, it's not at the mercy of higher up decision or studio decision. I'm pretty sure if I said, hey, I'm going to make a Dream Bandits pilot, I'm pretty sure I would get some support and funding for it. That's the power of personal projects and why it's worth investing in your own stuff. A studio does not always have to define your career or your voice as an animation person in the industry, because the stuff that you might want to do may not be the thing that studios will not allow you to do. Anyways, that's all. Bye. Thanks for hearing me out. Interested in learning hand-drawn animation or learning how to finish an animated shot from beginning to end? Have a look at the store where you'll find the complete Introduction to 2D Animation video course, tutorials, and other resources. Learn classical animation approaches, drawing, lectures, techniques, and other process videos. Visit the store through the link in the description below.